All right, who won the offseason better in North America, EU, and LCK? We're going to start that today. We're going to talk about North America, the promised land, and we finished top four at Worlds, so we're confirmed better than Korea. That's why Korea's last. They didn't make anywhere in the semifinals. They're the worst region in existence. NA has 3 world titles. Let's do this. All right, so the best teams we know who might have won the offseason are going to be argued between us both. He chose 100 Thieves, the best team, and I chose Team Liquid, who's probably going to win their third split in a row. And we're going to argue for the other smaller teams that kind of made changes, who might have probably won the offseason based off predictions of everybody and the roster moves they had made that didn't work out last year. So we'll say the big ones for a little bit. So what's the other 2 teams you're going to argue for? Other teams that you have, or it's not to be 2. It's gonna
be are you asking me what teams I think are going to be the best?
What are the teams you chose that think won the offseason based off their lower performance last year?
If you're in terms of improvements based off of purely just what I think the roster moves are, I think the 3 teams that improved are going to be obviously Team Liquid, 100 Thieves, and Clutch Gaming. They are the 3 teams that I believe actually made drastic improvements to the roster. Okay, but
my 3 will be, if I had to choose, I'm going with 100 Thieves, TL, not in any order, I'm just naming off teams. 100 Thieves, TL, and the one you haven't mentioned yet, the good old Golden Guardians.
That is fair, actually, yeah. I can see that.
Good old Golden Guardians. But let's go for the smaller teams first. Who I think won the offseason better for them in terms of better, like best, is Golden Guardians. You factor in their combined record in LCS is like 9 and 30 something, like 9 and 36 or whatever.
I try not to keep track of that.
They only have 9 wins in the LCS, all things considered, and they're almost completely overhauling the roster. New support, new mid, new top laner, and that's pretty good for them. They're getting who was arguably top 3 top laner with Korean imports over here in Hanser. Froggen's always been a decent mid laner. We even saw him in the EU Master scene do really well against mids he has never played against and completely dominate that too, even after leaving Echo Fox and being a star player on that. You also have Ole, who will probably mesh better with Deathly than having double lift in the bot lane. So that alone is going to be I think they technically won the offseason if you count that, going from 10th place and probably going to playoffs with your most recent introductions. Your turn.
Oh man, my sneeze just disappeared. All right, so I think technically, if we're talking about the in terms of like most improved, I'd give that to Golden Guardians, obviously. But I think the goal is not to be improved. Like you're not trying to improve as much as you can. You're trying to get to Worlds, and Golden Guardians, even with this drastic improvement, is not going to make it.
They might be in the regional qualifier.
Well,
by toward the end
I can imagine they will be. I mean, a lot of the lower teams get in there, but. The goal, essentially, they're going all out this season. They're not trying to build any NA talent. They're getting rid of any hopes of just building up talent, and they're going for I want to win this year. And essentially, that's not going to work. They got rid of all of their philosophy of we're going to grow homegrown talent and then we're going to build it up into the future.
But people already knew that was not going to work. Well, they were going to throw that out the next year anyway.
They shouldn't have, though. I think they had a good plan in mind. They didn't obviously pull it off because they kept bringing in like super old dudes like High and stuff. But I think for the most part, if they had just built a team around we're not thinking about anything like any relevancy until like right now, and we're thinking into the future, I think it could have worked. I think with
they might have won a championship with that kind of philosophy.
In the future, yeah. If I feel like their lack of belief in the system of League of Legends itself is the reason why they we don't know how long this is going to be around.
They forgot their morals to start winning.
Well, no, they didn't forgo any morals. I think they didn't do anything that was morally wrong. I think what they did was instead of looking towards the future, if they had done this out well, they built an organization around we believe in NA talent. I think they could have been essentially in the future one of the best teams. But instead of that, they went to we're gonna get rid of that, and we're looking for immediate success. This team's not gonna bring you success more like anything beyond playoff contention, and that's not good enough.
That is kind of a big jump between 10th place.
It is a big jump, but they don't. It's not like essentially. Think of it like in the NBA when they kind of how they tank. Even if they get the last, if they can't contend for a title with this thing. With the team they have, they will tank every single time. They'll get rid of all their good players, and they'll start going for draft picks and drawing young younger talent essentially. Well, that's essentially like Golden Guardians had that going for them. I think they could have. I mean, they didn't have any young grown talent, to be honest. I feel like even in their academy team, they still weren't good. But they should have went for it. They should have taken some of the newer the more better performing teams in the academy league and the Ocean, whatever that thing was. What was that thing called?
Is it called Oceania?
No, Oceania. Whatever that thing with the Ocean Drakes teams was.
Oh, scouting grounds.
The scouting grounds. Thank you. They should have looked for the better players in that, and they should have like put them onto their team. Give them some what's it called? Give them some.
I'd say give them some proper coaching.
Give them some exposure to the professional scene.
Oh, line them up with veterans.
Give them a
if
few.
You're gonna put like Hanser and Frog on the team, line them up with veterans.
I would say like you put like a few like veterans to give them a direction. Like even high, you're not looking for immediate success. I don't care about that. So you put high in there, and then you put a bunch of new people around him. He'll have to high tell him what to do, and the rest of them just get better at the game. Mm-hmm. I'm off track on this video, but I just wanted to go delve into why I think this is a bad move for Golden Guardians.
But / good move.
If you're talking about immediate success,
this is the 50-50 roster changes.
It's
that
not. I think
with all the leagues.
Instantaneous success is what they're gonna get. They are gonna go to playoffs. I think that's obvious. But
and the next team was what you said, Clutch.
I think Clutch Gaming.
Guess because you like Piglet.
Oh, not just
Fanboy.
that. Okay, shut up. Okay, so Lyra, I think the biggest reason as to why he underperformed is he said he had a back and forth with Febiven.
He had some internal clashes
with Febiven.
That's a professional term.
Like I think that
yeah, because I mean, you could notice in their games, Lyra like never looked at his lane, never even ganked for him half the time.
You don't have. I mean, the thing about it is, I can see why that would frustrate him, but I feel like Lyra was performing exceptionally well at the beginning of his tenure with NA.
Mm-hmm.
He played really well, and I think that the biggest it must have been internal conflicts what made him start performing poorly.
I think had a lot of internal conflicts.
But I think that a team with Lyra and Huni are a great topside, depending on what Lyra shows up.
Maybe
to be honest,
Huni can
depending on what Huni shows up.
Maybe Huni can mold Lyra into being a better jungler.
Like we have a bunch of people who I can't place faith in their consistency. Got Lyra, Huni, Piglet, and Vulcan. And like those are all people who I think that have.
Vulcan and Piglet don't even have good synergy in the Academy League.
They were probably the best bot lane in the Academy League, to be honest. But I think when it came to their NA, like their actual on the stage performance, I think Vulcan extremely underperformed when he actually played in the NA LCS. Mm-hmm. But Piglet, I mean, he hasn't had time to like actually. Like, yeah, I feel like he hasn't, since he came into NA, had a single good support. So I would like to see him with one. I would like to see... Vulcan seems like he's going to be great, but we need to see it.
You said he was garbage off camera.
I did. He played garbage in the NALCS. When he came into the LCS, he played terrible.
He's 0-2 in NALCS games, but that might all change with this year coming up.
So I think that in terms of what I think were the best moves, I think that 100% I would say that Clutch Gaming made one of the better roster moves. Mm-hmm. They picked up a bunch of people who are volatile. You could go to Worlds with this team. This is a team who could go to Worlds.
Could. Yeah. Now doing well there is a completely different story.
Well, we don't know. We don't know what kind of meta is going to be at Worlds. If it's aggressiveness, then I think they could do well. I don't think they're going to win Worlds.
This could be like, I don't know, maybe another one of those teams that can be like the third place team, but they're not good enough to beat the better teams than them, but they're good enough to beat everybody else. Those teams are always fine, in my own personal opinion.
Yeah, well, so. I'm excited for this team. I feel like they have a lot of potential, and they have a lot of potential.
Let's hope the roster changes and conflicts. The conflicts with a lot of players, they said, were their number motivation, randomly switching players out week 7, well, week 5 of the split. Why would you ever switch out players week 5? Like, it's crazy. Right.
The team,
there's no point.
Yeah.
Like, you essentially kill synergy at week 5. Hey, you all three of you move out. All three of you guys come in really quickly just so we can win some games. Like, I don't know. It's crazy.
Let me think. And how many? They both used both of their import slots, which is I'm kind of sad about that.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to import slot on Lyra because he hasn't performed. I would prefer Dardoch. Mm-hmm. If in my opinion,
if Clutch are gonna buy it by like half of Echo Fox, you might.
If they buy half of Echo Fox, buy essentially the best performing portion of it, which was Dardoch.
Mm-hmm. But now we're gonna get to the real juicy part about this. Mm-hmm. He's gonna argue for 100 Thieves, and I'm gonna argue for TL about who won the offseason better, because these teams clearly on paper won the offseason harder in the aspect of just the overall. Hey, I look at this. Oh my goodness, they changed that. that wow, best, oh my god factor, clickbait ever YouTube video. that type of reaction is what we got. So, ladies first. I'm just kidding.
Oh, you're so good. That was clever, man.
So, okay, we're gonna have to kind of take this from a different route than the usual. We're gonna argue for it because you look at 100 Thieves in TL, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so people got traded and stuff like that. So let's look at TL only grabbing what? 2 players, right?
Yes.
Was it the right move on TL's part to grab Jensen from Cloud9? And was it a bad move on Cloud9's part to let Jensen go? Yes, Jensen, bad part on Cloud9 to go.
Oh, we can't even argue that. Jensen was one of the best performing mid laners in the LCS, and Bo Belter was not. And that was a good move.
So it's a slam dunk for Team Liquid, and a half court layup maybe from Cloud9.
Let's think about this, and the scariest part about this is Jensen is not going to be an import slot during the summer split.
Oh yeah, because he came around the time of like Piglet and stuff was there too.
During the summer split, they're going to have another import slot freed up. So they're going to have Impact.
They can kick Impact if they want to.
They don't need to. Impact is a free import. I think what I'm saying is they could just kick everybody who's from the NALCS. Anybody born in NA, just kick them off.
And then just buy Korea.
And just buy Koreans.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
How about they just buy SKT?
I don't know.
And then you look at Genji's part to Team Liquid. Was it right for Genji to drop Corejj? And was it a slam dunk move to get Corejj and drop Olay?
In my opinion, I don't think they dropped Corejj. I think that Team Liquid bottom out on top of the fact that Corejj wanted to come back.
Yeah.
He wanted.
Did you see their faces after they got blasted every single game at Worlds? Their faces were like, I don't want to play with these guys anymore, and I want to leave. So I mean, you get that better settled out. I mean, if you just look at Crown and Ruler and Corejj's faces, there it was out. That was horrifying. All right, so and then now you look at 100 Thieves. Okay, so Huhi came from CLG. Was it a bad move for CLG to let go of Huhi? And was it bad of 100 Thieves to let go of Ryu? Technically.
In my opinion, I think that CLG's strongest point is their young developing... Well, not even young. I feel like they've been around for a bit. But they're developing talent in the bot lane. That is the portion of the team you should be building around. And I was really, like... In complete honesty, they got a better mid laner. They got a better mid laner in Power of Evil. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a great move on their part.
But arguably, Hui was like top 3 mid laner of like the splits.
But Power of Evil literally is a better.
1v9.
He's actually incredible.
Gotcha.
I'm excited for that, and on top of the fact that he looks exactly like Stixxay, so that's kind of cool.
So 100 Thieves, slam dunk, maybe.
100 Thieves?
I think CLG got a slam dunk or Power of Evil.
That is one player. That is not good enough for me to say this team is good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mm-hmm. They could be terrible.
But for 100 Thieves, probably to get a more consistent, aggressive mid laner like Hui, way better for them. It was visibly shown Ryu was just not good anymore.
I feel like the best bet was for... On paper, this is a good move for both of them.
Yeah. And then now you get to the controversial ADC points of Cody Sun, Rikara, and Bang. Was it right for SKT to let go of Bang, one of the more consistent members, or maybe sometimes more consistent than Faker during out the whole year?
That is not an argument. That's not true.
I don't like you. Over to get Cody Sun and Rikara dropped for 100 Thieves.
Okay. If you want my honest opinion, I think on SKT's part, that was amazing.
Bang.
Teddy is a better player. Mm-hmm. As of recency, Teddy is the better player out of Bang and Teddy.
But sometimes consistency is good.
Teddy's consistent. Teddy's consistent on a team that was terrible. He had one of the better stats in the league. I think that Teddy is probably...
He didn't even like playing...
Teddy, in my opinion...
Was carrying your team.
In my opinion, Teddy is probably one of the single greatest ADCs in the world. He could be... On a better team, I think he could be better than Uzi. I'm going to put that out there. I think that's kind of hard to say because I think Uzi has shown that Uzi has had a better time showing what he's capable of, while Teddy has not been able to.
Now you get to 100 Thieves point, and they're like, well, bot lane's not working out. What do we got to do?
Yeah.
Bang, you want to come over here? NA, Promised Land? He's like, no way. Promised Land, North America.
Don't be racist on top of the fact that was an Indian accent. You cannot do that.
Sneaky Daddy over here?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
Gets his backpack, luggage, going in the Promised Land of North America. So slam dunk on 100 Thieves part. I think Bang will be probably the second best ADC, probably next to probably a little bit less than Double F. So probably like, why is Double F gonna be better? It's just gonna depend on team aspect, communication wise. Double F can easily more communicate better with Team Liquid than Bang can with 100 Thieves at this point in time, in my own personal opinion. So I think Double F will be better than Bang in the regular portion of the split, but I think in playoffs, Bang will probably show more when he has to offer. And then you have like Sven and Sneaky probably fighting for that third spot, and then maybe Sneaky probably gets to like that fourth spot.
I'm gonna put this out there. I think the top 2 ADCs in the league are gonna be Bang and then Sven.
Not Bang and Double Lift?
No, I actually think Sven is still the better player. I know this is gonna be a controversial thing to say.
Not really, because a lot of people think Sven is overrated.
Okay, well that's what I'm saying. I think Sven is the better player out of Double Lift. That's why it's controversial. I think Sven.
You don't want to say Double Lift is overrated.
Double Lift is the better laner, but I think that Sven is so good at late game team fighting that just like
CSing.
if the game ever gets to where TSM doesn't have the less of it, that big of a deficit past laning phase, they're gonna win. But I think that Bang is probably the better in every aspect.
Remember when the Cloud9 game that was close in their best of 3 when they first played Cloud9 in summer? When they had that when they brought in the Swole Bros, the third game. Remember how he was carrying on Swain when the whole team was far behind? Mm-hmm. Crazy. Could you imagine Double Lift trying to do that on Swain?
I don't want to take away from Double Lift and say that he wasn't the best performing ADC last split.
His team didn't eight half the time.
No, Double Lift was by far and away the best performing ADC of the entirety of last year.
Yeah.
He had the best KDA by far. He had the best everything.
Mm-hmm. That was to be expected though.
It wasn't to be expected. That was incredible. That was probably his best season.
Team was powering to be first anyway.
I don't care what they were powering to be. I'm saying that was the best performing ADC we've seen pretty much of all time in terms of.
In terms of the best North American ADC we've ever had. That's just
that's just how it is. He's had the most time, and on top of the fact that last season was just by far and away his best season.
And now, all right, so we know what the stakes are, and who are we forgetting anyone else? Nope. You could argue, was it right for them to keep someday? Yeah, it was. Is that someday's the guy where you go into your game and he 1v9s the game and everybody honors him. Good luck, GG. Yeah, that's someday. All right, so he's gonna argue for 100 Thieves. I'm gonna argue for Team Liquid, who actually won the off season. So there you go, Big Dad.
It's hard to argue. 100 Thieves made in terms of their roster moves, they made better moves. I think Corejj versus Bang. I think Bang was probably the better pickup. If we're talking about in terms of the problem with this whole thing is I can't see them getting I can see 100 Thieves Team Liquid succeeding because I think they have an all around better team, but I think in terms of roster moves from the off season moves, I think Bang versus Corejj is probably the better Bang is the better pickup, but I'm trying to think of it. Jensen was you put me on this. I'm supposed to take the opposite side.
Okay, he'll argue for Team
No,
Liquid.
I don't want to argue.
I can argue for 100 Thieves.
Can you really argue for?
I can 100.
If we're
if I'll go for 100 Thieves point. We'll switch it up because he's chicken and doesn't want to face me. All right, so argue for 100 Thieves. Okay, so you go into 100 Thieves is an older lineup. You're okay, our mid can't compete internationally anymore. Our ADCs are non-existent. We bring in a Korean ADC who's been proven world champion over, and you're hoping that his success translates into success over here. Not counting in the fact that last year his team was just inting at the time beside Faker, and then he was considerably the second best performing mid laner of SKT. So you have a consistent ADC.
His second best performing mid laner. That's incredible.
A second best performing player on his team. So you have a player who can not only lane well, team fight well, and he has a pretty flexible champion pool in general, and he can play aggressive. You have just an overall better player than what you had before. And now you look at mid lane, who he is everything Ryu isn't. So then in that aspect, you're also getting an upgrade as well. So in terms of just those two laners, you're getting an upgrade and more flexibility added to your team. Because at a certain point, do you really think Cody-san and Ryu could play versatility? Yeah, people have to factor in versatility really helps you in best of fives, which are going to come up if these teams are going to play in best of fives, which they will. And Team Liquid record against 100 Thieves is really, really one-sided. Also, let's factor in Worlds. Worlds, if you're just factoring this comparable, you have to look at your year and go, if I had this roster, would I have done better? If they had this roster, they would have done it 10 times better in that group. Maybe go 3-3, probably not get out because of a tiebreaker situation, but let's factor that into it. And if you're going for international success, this is a team that will probably have been more internationally successful if they're going to MSI. If they win the spring split, then it's a lot better for them as well. Your turn.
Okay, so you're arguing for the roster moves themselves are better. I think that Jensen was
more arguments if you.
Okay, Jensen was a better move than who he was. Okay. Who he was an improvement. How come? What do you mean? How come? In terms of Pro Belter versus Jensen, Jensen was a drastic improvement. Ryu versus Huhi, it was still a pretty decent movement, but I don't think I don't think he was incredible. I don't think he was a superstar in NA. He was the best. He was probably the best performing player of what's it called, CLG, but it doesn't really say too much.
Okay.
Because that whole team was pretty downhill.
We don't count that team.
Yeah, but I think in terms of Bang was a better move than Corejj. I do think Corejj was an incredible pickup, but I still think all around the team itself in Team Liquid essentially filled their gaps, while 100 Thieves still has a gap in jungle. 100 Thieves all around, I think they look better, but like essentially all of the weaknesses that Team Liquid had last season, they filled in with both Jensen, with Pobelter, and then Corejj with what's his name, Ole. I think in terms of like in international success, this team is going to be the one you're going to have to look at, because with a team like a jungler like Anda, who honestly he did perform well at Worlds, but it's not going to be enough to bring them into the limelight in my opinion.
I think that if you go... Okay, so you're going... So what was that? You were arguing for...
I'm arguing for in terms of who filled in the gaps. They like...
Okay, gaps.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of gaps, you got to go with... What gaps were they supposed to fill in the first place? For TLs, it was,
The weaknesses in Team Liquid, they had weaknesses. Yeah, mid and support were their biggest weaknesses, and they filled both of them in.
Okay. And then you go to mid lane for 100 Thieves. Ryu and his overextending, not playing aggressive, like a team is gonna be able to be reflected off what other people are showing, and I think that Ryu wasn't really showing who he was showing all year, which was that decisiveness, shot calling, playmaking. I think who he offers all that, which is a drastic gap that Ryu didn't offer last year.
I don't deny the fact that he's an improvement, but I'm denying that
And another gap, which said ADC.
ADC
at a certain point, the reason why the team didn't funnel resources into him most likely was because they knew he couldn't do much with them.
Let's imagine this though.
Imagine if you funnel all the resources into Bang. Then there you filled your gap in there too. Now you filled your gap in of resources. I can put resources in this player and he can perform well too. And I have a better laner as well.
Okay, you're saying this, but realistically during the regular season, the biggest problems they had was not ADC. ADC wise, Cody Sun was playing well. But in terms of their biggest problems, it was jungle and mid. And honestly, Cody Sun during the regular season played well. I think that what happened to them was a result of internal conflicts. He couldn't perform in the playoffs or something. He couldn't play in the playoffs because they didn't play.
Now let's do...
But I think that the biggest problem... They didn't fill in their gaps because their biggest gap, essentially, it was mid lane and jungle. Like, I feel like if they don't replace Anda, they're not gonna be a world contender. They're not gonna. I think they still get out of groups maybe with a team like that, but I don't think
if
they
get out of groups, they're gonna probably lose in quarterfinals anyway.
They are, but I think Team Liquid can contend with some Chinese teams.
Yeah.
While 100 Thieves are gonna get exploited through the jungle.
Now let's argue for another point. Synergy. Now people have to factor in roster moves are perfect. Will they synergize well together? We saw Team Liquid. That's me arguing against them. This is me watching I watched every single Team Liquid video, even when they had worse rosters than this. The synergy, horrible synergy. Players arguing constantly, choking. This is a constant thing that goes on.
In what team?
Team Liquid.
That happened in the past, yes, but it didn't happen with this
But who's to say this roster won't have those same moves? Like,
because they
what
didn't.
if Jensen and Xmithy don't play mid and jungle duo properly?
What if
Corejj doesn't come with double lift very properly the way he thinks it's going to happen?
So what I'm saying is, where are you basing this? You're basing it off of Piglet and Dardoch had a fight, so this team will also...
But the same thing happened this year when they were in a Korea and boot
They
camping.
destroyed the NALCS with this team. They didn't have any form of...
No, I'm talking about boot camping before Worlds.
What I'm saying is they didn't... Essentially, this Team Liquid roster didn't have any of the past problems that the old one
well,
had.
what if it gets to that point again? Is he saying issues
I
going to
can't
arise?
predict the future, but I'm going to base it off of what I've seen, and what I've seen is this team...
Will this team synergy be better than the last one synergy?
I think that...
will these players even mesh together? We don't know that.
Well, that's something we can't argue about because it's something
you
can't
could.
know. We can't know. We can't know if they're going to synergize.
But just off the players themselves.
I think that Corejj 100% will. He's been in the LCS before. He has played with a lot of these players.
Backwards.
That was really, that was him. That was terrible. But I think the biggest thing is, I think the players that picked up, I think Jensen functions well in any team. He's a superstar, and...
I think that Bang is going to function better with Aphromoo because Bang is not going to actually argue with anything Aphromoo is going to say. They can't even speak the same language.
I'm sure.
I know it sounds kind of off to say.
What I'm saying is...
But Aphromoo makes a call, Bang just goes like, okay. That's it.
Well, then let's think about this. Since you're saying that Bang can't speak English, what makes him be able to understand the calls fully?
Well,
you're saying the
someday.
So you're saying that it's going to be so
if
essentially
Afternoon
these.
communicates things to Someday, then Someday can tell it to Bang.
Okay, well that's fair, but I don't understand
And
why.
Louis speaks Korean too.
Okay, that's okay. Well, what I'm saying is, what is the biggest thing? Biggest
I'm saying
problem?
the biggest thing.
The biggest problem in Team Liquid, you're saying, is synergy issues, correct?
I feel like synergy is gonna come up eventually.
Why are these issues not prevalent in? Because the thing about it is
for 100 Thieves. Because synergy with them was a lot different. They had synergy. The problem is
they had no synergy. The biggest problem with 100 Thieves was
shot calling. Now, if you
no.
argued shot calling, they would lose.
They had no synergy last season. Their ADC was a big problem. They wouldn't list. I'm like,
they
had a big fight with each other.
You said in terms of gaps, they fixed that.
They didn't fix. They fixed players wise. We don't know anything about this synergy.
I think that Bang will be more submissive to what Afremu wants to do if he feels like it's a better call.
I would like to see that happen.
Because, like you said, North American players have been a bit not deemed to be able to be listen to people. I feel like the way the Korean culture is, I think Bang will be able to listen to Afremu and accept his calls a lot more, good or bad.
I just really don't understand. Like the biggest problem with last teams, 100 Thieves last season. The biggest problem was synergy. Yeah. I feel like that still has to be somewhat relevant because
I think they improved it with these two players.
We can't just say we have to base it off.
Hui and Afremu already had previous synergy from CLG too. Well, that's something you could go off of.
We can go off that,
and that was good.
Okay. What about 100? Obviously, there was a big synergy issue with Someday. He didn't communicate well with the team. He had a lot of underperforming results toward.
And they had a Korean mid laner too.
What I'm saying is the biggest problem with this is the team that had the most recent synergy issues was 100 Thieves. Mm-hmm. Had an extreme the team broke apart because of the coaching staff.
God, Nate Shot still trusts them.
I more so don't like. Yeah.
I
think probably was a big issue last season, and I think that he might be able to fix it.
I mean, Team Liquid fixed a synergy issue too.
I think if we're gonna talk about the biggest synergy issues, it's gonna be with 100 Thieves. Mm-hmm. I think that is an argument you can't make.
Now, if you're talking about gaps,
I think the gaps
go for both teams, honestly.
Well, yeah, I don't think there's a gap. I think they fixed most of their extreme gaps in Team Liquid.
Wow. Now, what else could they fix in terms of gap synergy? Versatility. I think all these players are versatile and they can do pretty much whatever they need.
If you're talking about who I think, in terms of Team Liquid, I don't think they have too many gaps. Next split, in the summer split, I think they have a freed up import slot, mm-hmm. and we base it off of who it performed well. Mm-hmm. That's what gives them the edge too, because they can bring in anybody at that point.
There you go. Best you could argue best of fives, but Team Liquid lost 2 games in all best of fives they played last year. 100 Thieves lost. Oh God, man, I lost a ton. 3 in spring, 5 in spring, and then 3 more in. They lost again. So if you're arguing for playoffs, Team Liquid has them too.
If you're arguing in regular season, I think 100 Thieves performed well, and I think they filled in.
If you're going for once wise, I don't think Team Liquid performs better in best of ones. I think that was visibly shown all year that they could not do it in best of ones properly.
All they got to do is make the playoffs, and then that becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing is, on paper, it's obvious that Team Liquid...
Okay, if we're going on paper, gaps for both teams pretty much got filled.
No. The jungle gap is gigantic still.
No, gaps in terms of the roles they swapped out.
They still have a big gap in jungle. I don't think this is filled yet.
No, gaps in just the roles they...
Well, yes,
the players they switched.
They switched out players that had big gaps, but I feel like 100 Thieves still possesses big gaps while... The players that underperformed in Team Liquid all got filled up.
And if we're going with synergy, I think TL synergy comes from so what if the team synergy doesn't work when they're facing a better team? Let's say they're facing RNG and scrims next year, and because they win MSI and then they fall apart.
I'm gonna be honest, I can't know anything. I don't know what's gonna happen next split.
Because we can say 100 Thieves has bad synergy before, but TL's proven to have bad synergy when they leave this country. So.
I can't base because this is a pretty decently new team, and the people who underperformed are gone.
And who had bad synergy are gone though.
What I'm saying is, on paper, it's obvious that the Team Liquid roster looks stronger. I'd like to say on paper though. I mean in reality though, I feel like the explosiveness of the 100 Thieves roster could put them in first place because they have 2 extremely strong laners in Someday and Bang. Mm-hmm. I think that. Huhi is able to compete with anybody in the NALCS.
That's true.
So I think that if we in terms of
if we're just going off of who won it better, that's still gonna go by technicalities too. Because the point of to win the offseason is to not only win the split, maybe go to MSI, go to Worlds, is to also improve where you lacked in last year.
Well, I'm just saying I think that Team Liquid filled again. We keep going back to this point. Team Liquid filled in most of their weakest gaps. While 100 Thieves still possesses one more gap that I think Onda should. Onda only played a bit. He didn't play that long. I do agree with that. I think a lot of points that people make are...
Are we going to count those 3 months on FlyQuest?
I think that Onda's biggest weaknesses, though, are still going to be exploited because his pathing is pretty... It's not... It's one of the weaker... He has one of the weakest pathing.
Say it's garbage.
It's not garbage. I mean, he has a weaker pathing than Rainover, which is kind of sad. Mm-hmm. His pathing is worse than the top tier LCS junglers.
If 100 Thieves had got Dardoch, that gap would have been filled.
If they got Dardoch, I would say that Team Liquid would probably be the second best team.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
So pretty much conclusion, Team Liquid probably won the offseason harder. They got a better mid. Mm-hmm. They filled in their gap with Double Lift Synergy, which is their other star player. So what are they gonna be? Just another North American Fnatic?
I think honestly, in terms of what we've seen from both seasons, I mean,
but gaps. Okay, I didn't even read about this one. You thought you won.
What
about their gap in top lane? Impact can't play carries.
It doesn't even matter.
That matters a lot. It was proven and shown.
What I'm saying is
couldn't carry with carry top laners, which the other teams in NA did. Which were Cloud9's
The problem with that is that we're not talking about winning lanes at this point. We're talking about this team.
I'm talking about that is a gap right
We're
there.
talking this team.
And this is consistent through both international tournaments of last year.
Team Liquid is built around team fighting, while essentially 100 Thieves is built around 2 strong laners and then people not feeding.
I'm speaking about
I know what you're speaking about.
Your top laner is not only not flexible and can only play tanks, and that is so easily exploitable to other teams
in
the world.
So let's think about this. Impact is not going to feed.
While someday can play both of those and carry.
What I'm saying is, Impact is not going to feed, and in the terms of jungling,
he's not going to also be impactful.
What I'm saying is, Xmithy is going to completely out jungle Onda, and then it's going to impact the top lane because he's probably going to gank them.
What if someday smashing Impact?
He's not going. We've seen that that's not going to be the case. We've seen that he's not smashed Impact every time they've met.
But if Impact can only play tanks, he's not even
he is relevant.
He even said he can't play damage top laners even well.
They don't need a damage top laner. They only need a tank top.
But what if the meta's been a lot of focused around top more recently? Top laners doing this and this to work with your jungle.
Tanks will never fall out of meta in top.
I know, but if you are a player and you can't play top tanks very, very better than the other player that's playing tanks, then what really good are you?
He plays fine.
It was proven that he's also a weak point at international events too. Not as bad as Pole Belter.
He was not a weak. I don't think saying he was a weak point was kind of unfair to say because he played against he played against Smeb.
Did he play against Smeb?
Yeah.
He played against Smeb. Their group, Smeb and Ray.
Ray, and two of those
players
were extremely
who were visibly better than him.
I don't think Ray was visibly better than him for the most part.
Ray could play carry top laners better.
Yes, but he couldn't play tanks as well. So I think that the versatility point is fair. But I think for the most part, I think the difference.
Here.
Yeah, the difference in jungle will make up the difference there. Because I think that although somebody will win that lane, I think that Onda will lose the jungle pressure, and then that will affect the top lane.
It's not that the gap in top is a lot. It's just when you're not able to.
The gap in top is a lot. I think it's a pretty gigantic.
Because they're going for use of international. I think that when you look at his overall play from last year, was not impressive and was not anything.
I don't deny that. I do think that there's a liability.
If Pole Belter wasn't there, the next point of blame would be him, because the only thing people blame Ole for...
If you want my complete honesty, it would be Xmithy then Ole. Xmithy then Ole were the most exploitable parts of the Team Liquid at Worlds.
At Worlds? Yeah. I mean, because Impact was... he was also largely irrelevant. You go back to MSI, the dude lost every single lane...
I don't deny...
that he wasn't playing a carry top laner in.
I think
when he was giving carry top laners, he lost them the game.
I think that now that they have 2 substantially good carries in terms of Huhi and Doublelift, I think that they don't have to focus with a... See, the thing with Pole Belter was he wasn't capable of playing carry mid laners.
He was also not capable of winning lane.
But I think in terms of now that we have Huhi in the mid lane and Doublelift in the jungle, in the bot lane, while you have Xmithy in the jungle, I think that you have 3 players who are capable of playing carries. This tank duty can be shoved straight onto Impact. And that kind of feel like that his weaknesses in terms of he can only play tanks doesn't matter anymore because he can
What
play
if my
tanks.
player plays tanks better than you?
That doesn't matter. He doesn't have to be better than the player because you don't have to be better in
Because
every.
even in games where he was given both players had tanks, one person just played it better than him.
It doesn't like the thing about it is I don't think him being worse in a lane matters as long as he doesn't feed. If he doesn't feed, they can team fight better than everybody in the NL.
So we're looking at if we're going lane by lane.
Top lane is 100% in favor of 100 Thieves.
Okay.
Jungle is in favor of
Liquid.
Team Liquid. Mid lane, Team Liquid.
Oh yeah, because Jensen has beaten Hui many times in the mid lane before.
ADC we'll have to see.
That might be a tie, honestly.
I will have to see what happens in this split, but support. I think Corejj has proven recently that he's been playing.
So we're going by top one. So it's gonna be one for 100 Thieves for top, one for jungle, and then you go mid. That's TL. If you go by ADC, that's kind of a tie. So that's like what, one and then one for TL, and you go by support. Who's the better support between Corejj?
In terms of
if you go with Team Liquid, that's 4. They would if you go to 100 Thieves, that's tied up.
I think that Corejj exerts a lot of lane pressure, which is something that Afremu does well too. So I'd like to see that matchup first off.
If you go by that would probably
if we're going by team fighting, I think
if you go by tie, so that's 4-3. Because then technically,
where are these numbers coming from? There, you were holding up a 2 right here.
No. Team Liquid has a 4. So, but now we have to go with a difference. So, 4 Team Liquid and 300 Thieves. Now, gaps, synergy, and versatility.
I think the jungle gap is large enough.
No, but I'm talking about just gaps in just the players that they swapped out.
You can't just count numbers because the difference in gaps also makes a big difference. All right.
Okay, so let's just look at just the overall gap. Whose team filled the gaps better?
We already went over this. Team Liquid obviously.
All right, so that's a 5. I think that synergy. I think that 100 Thieves still got. I think they just drastically improved their synergy from.
They did. Maybe we can't know because obviously their biggest problem last season was synergy.
I think TL won this offseason.
I think they did. I just don't want to keep going over the same problems because
I'm trying hard here.
You are. I didn't want to argue for 100 Thieves because I didn't believe in them. Like
yeah,
I believe they made good improvements. I just don't believe they're better than Team Liquid.
Are you confident to say Team Liquid will win their 3rd split in a row?
Not really, because I think the explosiveness of the clutch gaming and the 100 Thieves could make anything happen.
All right, so that's pretty much it. Who won the off-season harder? You guys will see the title. Put down in the comment section below. Who do you think won the off-season harder? You guys could probably give up arguments that we probably didn't even think of. I was just thinking of the most basic things. We didn't even talk about champ select. I mean, the drafts for both teams are pretty. I mean, the drafts for both teams are pretty geared toward their strengths. So you really can't argue that because that's going to be a meta.
No, it's not because 100 Thieves literally always puts.
Oh yeah, Prolly and Kane, the better coach.
I mean, Kane is obviously better.
Okay,
Prolly keeps putting someday on tanks.
They had Fiora open too in those games.
Oh yeah, makes me sad.
See you guys later. Next video is going to be the promised land of where who came from that country.
What?
Christopher Columbus came from there. EU.
Oh my god.